Good morning, students. Today we will study about absorption of water. All of you knew about roots. Roots are the organs of absorbing water. Root hairs. Moving to the next slide. Root hairs are the main organs of absorbing water. These are present just above the elongation zone. When we look on the outline structure of the root, it is separated into following zones and like meristematic zone, elongation zone, cell division zone and maturation zone. And the root is protected by root cap. So the root hairs are the organs that are responsible for absorbing water. Now, how this absorption occurs? What are the theories that are propagated for the absorption of water? The following mechanisms are discussed, like active absorption and the passive absorption. When the water is absorbed only due to the activity of the root itself, particularly the root hairs, then it is called active absorption. And this active absorption can be of type osmotic or non-osmotic. Osmotic due to water absorption due to difference in OP. That is, from region of water moves from region of low OP to high OP. That is, from region of high water potential towards region of low water potential. This is explained by osmotic theory. Next comes the non-osmotic one. That is, if the water is entering the root cells against concentration gradient, then it comes under the category of non-osmotic theory of active water absorption. This theory shows that energy is responsible whenever movement is against concentration gradient, then energy is involved. If we stop energy flow by using respiratory inhibitors like KCN, then the non-osmotic active absorption of water doesn't take place. That is, movement of water from high DPD region to low DPD region can't occur. Now comes the passive water absorption. This is the most explanatory one, and the water is absorbed by this mechanism only. Under the condition of passive water absorption, the factors originate somewhere on the upper side, that is the leaf. Root plays a passive role. Passive water absorption is regulated by the transpiration pull. The transpiration pull and water absorption theory put forward by the Joly and Dixon we will discuss in our next lecture. So, you have been cleared about the idea that the mechanism of water absorption broadly categorized into active absorption and next one is passive absorption. Active if mechanism originating in the root itself. Passive when it is originating in the upper area, that is leaf. Active can be of two types, osmotic due to the difference in OP or against the concentration gradient involving energy, that is non-osmotic theory of active absorption. Now we come to the point, that is, what is the pathway? Pathway of water through the root cells, cell to cell movement of water. How this occurs? The pathway of water from root hair to the xylem elements in the roots is shown in the given figure. There are possible ways how the water reaches the root cells, that is from root hair to moving from root hair to the epiblema, cortical cells, and then the endodermis pericycle, and then the xylem, ultimately the xylem. So there are three possible pathways. Number one, through a system of interconnecting cell walls and intercellular spaces. How? First is through interconnecting cell walls and intercellular spaces. That is the non-living pathway, or what we can call it apoplast pathway. This movement does not occur due to osmosis but occurs through the capillary action involving free diffusion. So, when water moves through the interconnecting cell walls, intercellular spaces, and through the cell walls, that is the apoplast pathway, the movement occurs through the capillary action involving free diffusion. Diffusion, all of you studied that from movement of any gaseous, liquid or solvent from reason of its higher concentration towards lower concentration, and this is how it is following the apoplastic pathway. Next come the living cytoplasm. What are the living parts? Plasmodesmata. These are the living, that is symplast pathway involving living protoplast continuum. And next come third one, through the living cytoplasmic membranes, cytoplasm, vacuoles of the cortical cells. This pathway involves many physical forces and lot of resistance. The water moves from one cell to other due to osmotic gradient. The root hair and other epidermal cells, when absorb water, becomes turgid. This pressure potential, that is Tp, is increased. Consequently, their water potential also increases. The water potential of the next cortical cells now becomes comparatively lesser. The water moves from high water potential area to the low water potential area. Thus, the movement of water occurs due to water potential gradient from cell to cell in the cortex region and finally reaches the endodermis. So, how the pathway is? The water enters from root hairs up till endodermis through the osmotic gradient. That is how the OP, the soil has less OP and more water potential. The root hair cells here have more OP and less water potential. So endosmosis occurs and water moves from root hairs to epiblema, cortex cells, and then stops at the endodermis. Pathway is undertaken by the symplastic pathway, that is the living one. The endodermal cells are characterized to have Casparian thickenings in their radial and transverse walls. So now the movement stops because The Casparian strips are impermeable to water. But there are certain regions just opposite the protoxylem area. Certain cells are present known as passage cells. What these are called? Passage cells. These passage cells are usually present opposite the protoxylem elements. These are present just opposite the protoxylem elements, and these passage cells allow the movement of water. Finally, the water enters into xylem through the pericycle. Once the water enters into the lumen of the xylem tracheids and vessel, it moves upwards due to driving forces. So this is how the movement of water across root cells occurs. That is cell to cell movement of water from root hair region, epiblema, cortex up to the endodermis region, then endodermis being covered by Casparian strips. Certain cells just opposite the protoxylem area are known as passage cells, and these passage cells allow the further movement of water, and now water enters the xylem, tracheids and vessels, and now water is ready to move upwards due to the different driving forces. Just a look into the apoplastic and symplastic pathway. Symplastic pathway, that is the living one. The living pathway involving cytoplasm, plasmodesmata and the living protoplast continuum. And the apoplastic pathway, the reason interconnecting cell walls and intercellular spaces. How? Apoplastic pathway, the intercellular spaces and the cell wall region. Water is entering in this way. Blue apoplastic pathway, and the symplastic living one through the inner cytoplasm, symplastic pathway, plasmodesmata and so on. This is the living pathway, that is the symplastic pathway for the movement of water. So now it gets more clearer that the water moves from root hair region up till endodermis region due to the osmotic gradient, but it is stopped by the Casparian thickening present on the endodermis. But certain cells in the endodermis are not provided with the Casparian strips, and these are known as passage cells, as they provide passage to the movement of water further into the xylem. And these passage cells are present just opposite to the protoplasm region, protoxylem region. So this is how the pathway of water upwards movement occurs. Simple representation how water enters from soil solution. This is soil solution, and this is our cell sap of root. Soil solution has low OP, less DPD and high water potential. So the water starts moving from low OP to high OP, from less DPD to high or more DPD, from high water potential to the region of low water potential. So this is all about water absorption, how water is absorbed by the root hairs. Thank you.